I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby, here with multiple Emmy winner Bradley Whitford, who stars as Commander Lawrence in The Handmaid's Tale. First of all, Bradley, congratulations on Emmy nomination number 8.
Wow. Yeah, I'm eternally in shock at how lucky I've been. But I got to say, this year I was watching the show and turning to my wife and saying there was something about the pandemic. There's something about the time that we have spent together in the last couple of years on this show. There's something about the commitment to the show. I kept turning to my wife going, everybody is so good this year. Everybody. Um, the day player, Hooker from the Jezebel, was perfect. Everybody was perfect. And I kept saying that I really wanted, I know it's Emmy time, but the thing that I was most hopeful for this year, that I really feel like the acting department deserves, would be some sort of ensemble award like the SAG award. But then with these nominations, with the sort of breadth of all the different performers, I feel like we sort of got that, which really meant a lot to
Yeah.
me.
Like 10 actors in total were nominated this year. That's phenomenal on a fourth season show. Sometimes the Emmys move on, as you know, they move on from shows because they find shiny new toys. No, everybody recognizes that season 4 of The Handmaid's Tale was phenomenal. So congratulations to all of you. That's such a great
Thank
achievement.
you. We're very, very lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. But for yourself, Emmy nomination number 8, before we move on about the show itself, does it ever get old, or do you still get super excited every time you get nominated?
No, it does not get old. I mean, it is such a miracle to be able to work. It's such a miracle to be able to be in something that isn't horrible. It's such a miracle to be in something that is sort of firing on all creative cylinders and saying something about the world right now. I do not take that for granted. And there's always this, like, you have all these people uh, nominated and not nominated who are having this creative experience of their lifetimes, and then they're forced into this reality show where, like a dog show, somebody comes out at the end and says the schnauzer is better than the poodle.
Yeah,
So you got to keep that in mind. But no, it doesn't get old. The older I get, the luckier I feel.
yeah. Season 4 was also notable because Lizzie Moss directed 3 episodes. It was her directorial debut. He also directed the episode that you chose for Emmy submission, Testimony. It's an obvious question to ask, but I really do want to hear your thoughts about how much you enjoyed working with her in that way, not just as a co-star, but also and a friend, but also as the Helmer on an episode.
Uh, I feel so. I keep telling people. Somebody said, "How do I feel about Lizzie?" And it was like, I love her. I love her the way. I met her when she was 17. I get to meet up with her later in her incredible creative life, and it's like these moments you have with your grown kids where you're like, I can't believe what you became. She is giving the performance of a generation. The degree of difficulty is off the charts. She appears to do it um, effortlessly. And on top of that, she's the creative center of the show. And it's been a really fun thing to play because I actually came to realize, at one point I was this older authority figure, I'm assuming, when Lizzie was 17. Uh, and now I'm being led by her. And I actually think that's what's going on in the show. Is I don't think Lawrence is conscious enough to acknowledge it. But what was really interesting to me this year, on screen and off, was she's leading me. Um, But yeah, it's incredible. And I had to do just like a couple of scenes because they didn't pick up scenes last year. And they were shot. There were shots of Lizzie. They just didn't have a director. They didn't have a director, and they were just some pickup shots. So I was technically directing, and she was talking how nervous she was about directing, and I was like, "Oh my God, you are so ready!" And she was off the charts. I didn't even. Uh, uh, she's exactly what I want in a director. The exchange is it's about common sense. It's about exploration. I loved working with her, and I think part of the reason everybody was so good this year is because almost a third of the shows uh, were directed in this wonderful atmosphere that she created.
Yeah. You know what? It's so funny. My wife's not at West Wing. She never saw it. So I was watching In the Shadow of Two Gunmen the other day. She turned to me and said, "Is that Elisabeth Moss? She's a baby." I'm like, "Yeah." And that's Bradley Whitford. I'm like, "Yeah." And years later, they've turned the tables. And that's why you guys have this incredible, or one of the reasons why you have this really incredible chemistry, which I don't not normally like to use, but it's actually really true. And you've got a real ease with her. And I think that obviously helps your performance.
Well,
So
I trust her as somebody. Uh, she can do the external preparation, directing, what lens, and she can have a very intuitive discussions about acting. I love working with her.
So with Testimony, the episode that has been chosen for you, or you chose, what went into the decision to put that forward to Emmy voters?
Everybody told me that's the one I should do.
It is
uh,
a good one.
uh, I knew. Uh, I love. It's funny because everybody said it, and I was like, "Well, let me look," and they're like, "No, we need to know. We need to know today." But I knew it was this. I love. It's a fascinating dynamic with Lydia. It's interesting stuff with Max. And I loved uh, shooting it with Lizzie. So I find it, I just short out when and I'm not proud of it because I think it's probably uh, vanity disguised as humility, but I can't fucking stand to watch me act. So
Mm,
I let other people do it. I
that's
like
fair enough.
doing it. It's like acting's like touch football. Well, you don't know touch football,
No,
but
I know it. I know. Yeah, yeah.
okay, like in American touch football, that's how I feel about acting. I like to do it. I don't think it's a great spectator sport.
No, yeah, it's so true. It's like golf or anything else. Like great, maybe to play it, but to watch it, no thanks. That's just me. So like, but I tell you what, with Testimony, which I was one of my favorite episodes as well, the scene between Lawrence and Lydia is so telling about his state of mind because I love the way he taunts her, essentially suggesting that she's a sadist. So what were you going for in that scene with the amazing Ann Dowd, also nominated again?
As well she should be. You know, what's interesting, what's great about working with Anne is Anne will come in and go, um, why am I here? Why is this happening to me? Why am I allowing him to, to talk like, to talk to me like that? And there's a very interesting, I think I'm playing a very complex mind game with her. I'm shaming her. That's what you are. You're 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 a sadist, and and somehow I know she has a capacity for shame. Um, uh, and I remember thinking about this when we were doing the scene because I guess I always kind of think of things in political metaphors, but part of the reason we had like, the worst president in human history who let 500,000 people die is because he has no sense of shame, and it's hypnotic to encounter someone like that. She is in play, and I think he was taunting her, and I believe it's in that scene where I say very directly, people don't like you. I get it. People don't like me either. But I think it shows his. Um, I've always thought about this guy. I've said this before. Huge brain obliterated his humanity, and now his humanity is kind of peeking around. But he has a he's like and he likes having people, part of his power is keeping people off their step, even Aunt Lydia. I always say he's sort of 3/4 Robert McNamara, who prosecuted the war in Vietnam, and 1/4 Charles Grodin on a talk show.
Yeah.
He's able to use the discomfort to manipulate people.
But see, that's a really complicated thing that is happening in those scenes that is very subtle and makes us question what is he doing. So, for example, um, he feels like he's still in play. He feels like he wants to redeem himself going forward. But then on the other hand, he says to a very cruel Aunt Lydia to do with Janine what she wants. And then I'm trying to stare into your character's eyes and wondering what is he getting at here? And so are you always having that battle in your head about where he wants to be in the next 12 months?
Yes, uh, it's always that battle. There's a like a disturbing pragmatism to him, um, that I think he probably feels defensive about
Yeah.
with June. Like, look, you know, uh, I can't just do what you want. I can make it easier to do what needs to be done if you give me 10 of those kids back.
Yeah.
10 of them who are miserable. I've heard. I know they're miserable. This is a way for me to, uh, uh, you know, I, I, I have this sort of economist's cut off clarity about, yes, some people are going to have to die, some people are going to be miserable. I think that is the end of a huge, when I tell her to do with her what you will, I've basically challenged her by saying you're just a disgusting human being who everybody hates. I think I am, in a pretty sophisticated way, manipulating her, but uh, by basically saying, yeah, just be the horrible person you are, that I just told you you were, knowing that that's not going to be the way it plays out.
Yeah, it is really sophisticated, not only in the writing, but also and your performance, but just also in the way that this character, is playing this journey out for himself. There's another moment I just wanted to get your thoughts on this because there's so many great moments in season 4, like really heartbreaking stuff, really like exciting, really horrifying. But there was one really simple thing in Testimony. You don't even appear in this scene. It's where the Waterfords are defiantly walking out of the compound, and there's all these unhinged, crazy fans, adoring fans, cheering them on with signs and stuff. And it reminded me so much of what we saw over the last 4 years, particularly on January the 6th. And I know we've talked about this before, but I just wonder, is it still so uncanny for you that this show is so good at drawing uncomfortable parallels with the real world in sometimes quite sophisticated ways?
Yes. Yeah, I found that, I was, I had read the episode, but I hadn't thought about it, and it's I probably didn't read the stage directions in a scene I wasn't in uh, as carefully as I would if
Yeah.
I was in
Yeah.
it. So when I saw it, I was like, "Wow!" I'm with the rest of the audience going, "They're going to get torn apart out there." And when the opposite happens, it really took my breath away,
Same.
because that is. That's exactly what is happening. And I did not, um, the show does it in other ways as well. In a lesser written show, um, uh, Gilead would be toppled a lot more easily. I think
Yes.
Bruce is keenly aware that uh, the repressive regime in Saudi Arabia has been there for quite a while. The repressive regime in North Korea has been there for quite a while. Uh, there's a tenacity to these oppressive uh, regimes, and one thing that has absolutely stunned me um, in this country is the ability for a kind of civic virus.
Yeah.
I would compare none of what has happened here to what happened in Germany, but I now understand how a civic virus like that can take hold, and it is terrifying people's willingness uh, to abandon their humanity in order to follow a crazy person or a crazy set of values. It's really disorienting. But I think the show navigates that. Whenever Bruce gets, there's been understandable criticism about the violence in the show, and Bruce keeps track of, the hangings in Saudi Arabia and the executions in North Korea. Um, and I think the show's uh, tracking of that has been um, keeps it unfortunately relevant.
That's right. Bruce is like, he's incredibly smart. He told me that, just because Trump lost the election doesn't mean that it all just was going to go away. Shit's still happening. It's still this, as you say, this civic virus. And the show does that so well. This show has never, ever been a simple, like, unnuanced, I don't even know what that word is, show where we just have simple, unsophisticated things that happen and we all just move on with our lives. So I'm really glad that you raised
Well,
that.
and what's interesting is that Bruce finds a way. Again, on a lesser show, my character would have an epiphany,
Yeah.
and um, uh, but that would be an insult to the obstacles that a character like June, not in fiction but in life, really faces. It's a lot more intractable than someone having an opinion, but it's much more complicated to navigate.
Yeah. Really is. Before we say goodbye, I wanted to, as you know, as a West Wing nerd, like my colleague Matt Noble, it was such a gift for us to get the West Wing special on HBO Max. It really, really was. It was like that particular period of time was very difficult for many of us around the world. There was a big election going on in the US, and there's like, we're all dealing with this pandemic. So it was great to see. And I just wonder, I know it's a simple question, but looking back, can you pinpoint a highlight or something that you'll cherish about getting involved and doing that special?
The first thing that comes to my mind, it's interesting because if anybody ever asks me, what's was my favorite day shooting, it will always be when Yo-Yo Ma was improvising on his priceless cello
Oh,
and Dulé Hill was tap dancing. And there was a moment when we were shooting when Dulé started just doing this sort of extraordinary tap dance, and it was just great to be. The hardest thing about that was I we really could, we're a very close group. We really are. We love to see each other. We feel very lucky we had that experience together. And 7 years of 22 episodes a year will is like a marriage. It will reveal every part of you. The level of intimacy is crushing, and we couldn't like throw our arms around each other, and that was kind of a drag. But man, I thought Tommy nailed
Yeah.
a really interesting singular way to do that. It was so funny because originally we were just supposed to, read scripts around a table, and then I remember talking with Tommy, and it was just such a flashback to like you could feel Tommy's like creative engine getting going, and then pretty soon I'm like, oh, so we're not on book, and he's like, no, you're carrying it, but Martin memorized it, so I'm like, oh, so we're like just doing an episode.
Yeah.
But
So,
it was really fun.
and there must have been something in the water because superficially, sorry, the cast, you've all aged so well. So, that's a good thing. That would not, there was no criticism there. You all looked great. So before we let you go, I just wanted to also wish you all the best for your upcoming documentary, which is coming out on the 13th of August,
Yes.
Not Going Quietly. It's won awards already at South by Southwest. It looks really great. You worked obviously tirelessly to get that out. Are you super excited about that one?
I am more excited about this than anything in my life. Adi Barkan is an absolute hero of mine and a dear friend. Uh, he's an activist, a progressive activist who, at age 31, dropped a spoon and was diagnosed with ALS. And can no longer speak or breathe for himself, but it has not stopped him. And he is fighting for Medicare for all and for universal access to meaningful health coverage in this country. And he's one of these extraordinary human beings. They build religions around people who use their suffering to allow they transcend their suffering in an effort to reduce it for other people. So I can't wait for everybody to see this.
Yeah, I can't wait to see you as well.
And it's oddly funny, and you'll see he's a very funny guy.
Perfect. Bradley, thanks again for your time. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Good luck at the Emmys. And of course, we look forward to seeing more of you on our TV screens.
Pleasure. Are you guys coming to the Emmys?
Who knows? Is it going to be on?
Oh, no. Nobody knows. We'll see.
Well, if so, we'll see you there.
Okay.